Hello and welcome to Dynamic Arrays. My name's Jeff. I'm glad you're here. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer and I love sharing the things that I've learned about Excel over the years. And I'm excited for this session because we get to talk about dynamic arrays. So before we jump right into Excel, I want to zoom out first and then we'll zoom in, okay? So what is this idea of a dynamic array? Well, over the years that we've been using Excel, we've come to understand that when we write a formula and hit enter, the formula returns one result, and that result is displayed in that cell that we typed the formula into, right? In other words, a formula returns a result. That's how we think about, that's how we use Excel. But here's the deal. Formulas can return multiple results. And the techie term for a set of multiple results is called an array. So that's the first part of our title here, dynamic arrays. Array means I can have multiple results. Jeff, hold on. I've been using Excel for a while. I type in a formula and it uses the sum function and it returns one result. I can't imagine the sum function returning like multiple results or average, count, min, max, right? They all return one result. I know we're going to unpack the functions that can return multiple results in a minute, but for now, let's just stay zoomed out. So we have a formula that can return multiple results or an array. And the question is, what happens when a formula returns multiple results? Well, depending on when you're watching this and depending on the version of Excel that you're using, they will spill out of the formula cell and into the adjacent cells. Okay? And this range is called the spill range. And here's the cool part. When the formula is recalculated, if it returns more results than last time, then the spill range will adjust accordingly. In other words, it's dynamic. Okay? So that's how we get this idea of dynamic or changing size, changing values, array, multiple results. Okay? So that's kind of like the big picture. Now we need to go ahead and zoom in and take a look at some of the functions and formulas. So in this webinar, we're going to talk about spill range, spill reference, and multiple columns. Let's start with spill range, and we're going to talk about two functions, unique and sort. So we write a formula, we hit enter. When the formula returns multiple results, those results spill out into the adjacent cells. And again, this depends on the version of Excel that you're using. So if in your version of Excel, the results aren't spilling, I would still encourage you to check out this webinar because it just means that when you update to a version of Excel that does have this, then you'll be up to speed quickly. So let me go ahead and turn over to Excel and I'm going to open up a workbook called Spill Range. And let's zoom in here so it's a little easier to see. Okay. So here's the idea. We are going to write a formula here. This formula is going to return multiple results. When it does, those results are going to spill out of the formula cell into a range which is called the spill range. Let's check it out. I'm going to go ahead and write a function called unique. Okay, unique. Now, a quick way to know if your version of Excel has this capability is type equals, type UNIQ, and if you get unique, then it means you're on a version of Excel that has this spill range capability. So I'm going to type in unique, and the purpose of the unique function is to return a list of unique values. And there we have it. It's returning a list. A list can contain multiple values. So this function returns multiple values, an array. So what we need to do is just tell it which range we want it to operate on. There's some other arguments and I'd encourage you to check them out, but for now this is good enough. So we're going to ask the unique function to give us a list of the unique values found in table 1's account column. Okay, it's a single formula. I hit enter. That formula returns multiple results. Those results spill out of the formula cell into the adjacent cells. When I select the formula cell, the formula looks normal in the formula bar, right? And I can click it and I can edit it and everything is good. But look what happens when I inspect the formula inside of the spill range. If I click on any cell in the spill range, it's dimmed out. And that's communicating with me, Jeff, This is not truly a formula cell. This is part of the spill range. Okay. So what's the idea of a dynamic array? Well, check this out. Let's say we type in 10018 and we call it Internet of 500. Okay. Just like that, without doing anything, the results are dynamic, and there are more accounts than last time. And so as the Excel calc engine is recalculating, the spill range will adapt to the number of results returned. Okay, let me go ahead and delete this row, and there we have it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and write all of the formulas twice. So let me go ahead and delete this formula, and let's try it again. Equals unique, and I'm just going to give it the range. Now, here's the thing. Tables have been around in Excel for a while, and that's this blue and white range. But if you haven't used them very much, no worries. I have a ton of freely available blog posts that you can use to get up to speed on tables. But here's the thing. We can reference the values in a table using what's called a structured table reference, right? So in other words, I could reference a range using an A1 style range reference, and that's how we've been using Excel for a long time. But when the results are stored in a table, I can use a structured table reference instead. And a structured table reference begins with the table's name, followed by the column name enclosed in square brackets. So one way to get this into the formula is just select it with my mouse, and that would be just fine. Another way is to type it in. So for example, I could type in table 1, open the square bracket manually, type in the column name manually, close the square bracket manually, and that's another way to refer to it. Another way to get it into a formula is just to select any cell within the desired column and press and hold Control and then space. And that's another way to get that structured table reference into the formula. So sometimes if the table's on the same worksheet like it is now, what I might do is just click and drag or select a cell and do Control space. That would be fine. But in situations where the table's on a different worksheet, most often in practice, I just type in that reference by hand. But either way, if you haven't seen that, I just want to kind of unpack what that really is doing here. So we hit enter. All right, so that's the first one. Let's go ahead and go to the next exercise, exercise 2. Let me zoom in a little bit. All right, we want to create a unique list of customers. And if I look at this data worksheet, let's zoom in a little bit. I can see that this data is stored in a table, and the table is named table 2. And by the way, if you haven't ever created a table before, it's easy. You can just select the cell in the range and use insert table. Okay. But in any event, now I can see that this table has a name. It's called table 2, and I see that this column is called customer. So I'm going to go ahead and use the unique function again, equals unique. And instead of toggling back and forth to select the range, I'm just going to type it in by hand. If you feel more comfortable toggling back and forth, that's totally cool. But in this case, I'm just going to type in the table's name, table 2, open square bracket. I'm going to type in customer, close the square bracket, and close the unique function. All right, and so that's another way to enter the structured table reference into the unique function, or any function for that matter. Now I'm going to go ahead and press enter, and now I get this error. And it's like, what? Spill error? What? All this is telling us is, Jeff, I am a formula that returns multiple results. These results want to spill out of the formula cell and into the adjacent cells, but there are some values inside of the spill range. Therefore, I'm just going to let you know, and I'm going to give you this error message. No worries. All we need to do is select these cells, and when I delete them, then the spill happens, and we're all good. Okay? So that is an example of the unique function and returning multiple results. What if I wanted this list to be sorted in ascending order? Currently, this list appears in data source order, right? QEX 711, QEX 711, and then STR, and then PBS, STR, PBS. Okay, so this is in data source order. No worries, we can apply a sort order to this by using the sort function. So let me go ahead and edit this formula, and I'm going to wrap the unique function with the sort function. In other words, I'm going to wrap the sort function around the unique function. So let me go ahead and close this. So now I have a sort function which is going to sort a list. What's the list? The list is the array, the dynamic array, returned by the unique function. Okay, so the unique function is going to go first. It's going to return this list of unique values. It's going to send that into the sort function. The sort function is going to sort it ascending. We hit enter and we got it. And by the way, the sort function has some additional arguments, so you can go ahead and check those out. And it allows you to control the sort order, like ascending, descending, and some other things. Let me go ahead and write this formula one more time. Equals sort. I want to sort an array. What is the array? The array is going to be generated by the unique function. The unique function is going to look at all of table 2's customer column and give us a unique list of those values. It's going to send those results into the sort function, and when we hit enter, yes, it worked. It worked. And that also is a dynamic array. So if there were additional rows or changing customers, they'll dynamically appear in this list. Okay, good? All right, so that's our warm-up and really what it means to have a spill range. Let me go ahead and close this. Let's go back to here. And let me send you to a resource. Maybe you don't have dynamic array capabilities in your version of Excel right now. And maybe a few months goes by and then you update and you get this capability in your Excel and you're like, Jeff was talking about some kind of dynamic array assumption, but I want a written tutorial that I can read at my own speed at any time. Well, I've got that for you. Just head to the Excel University website. And when you get here, click Publications. This is going to give you a list of all the books and articles that I've written. Feel free to check out any that look interesting to you. But the one I'm after now is this first one here called Dynamic Arrays. You can click that, and that's going to be a full written tutorial. It's a narrative you can work through at your own speed and get some additional information on dynamic arrays. Okay, good? All right, excellent. Now let's go to the next one, spill reference. Spill reference. And to demonstrate this, I'm going to use a function called SUMIFs. So here's the deal. We are aware of a variety of different operators. And operators are those characters that we use inside of formulas in our expressions. For example, the addition operator, just a fancy term for the plus sign, right? We have the subtraction operator. We also have a spill range reference operator. Okay, and it's the pounder hash tag. So let me go ahead and head back to Excel, and I'm going to open spill reference. Let's zoom in. Okay. Let's begin by getting a unique list of the accounts. So once again, I'm going to go with the unique function, and I'm going to specify this range as the argument. And I'm going to hit enter. That's going to give us a unique list of the accounts. Now let's do a subtotal, or the total of the travel. Okay, what I'm going to use for this is the SUMIFs function. And the SUMIFs function has been out for quite a while, so there's a chance you've already been using it. But if not, I think it's a great function, and I have tons of freely available blog posts and articles that you can use to learn more about the SUMIFs function. But basically what it does is it's a conditional summing function. So it allows you to add up a range, but include only certain rows. And so the narrative that I use when I write the SUMIFs function sounds something like this. Go and add up the amount column, comma, but only include those rows where the account column, comma, is equal to our account. And before I press enter, let's just review. I'm asking the SUMIFs function to add up the table's amount column. That makes sense, but don't include all the rows. For travel, right? We only want travel. So we only want to include those rows where the account column, comma, is equal to our account. I think that looks right. So let me press enter. And we get 615, and if I look at travel and travel, I get 615. So this is the correct value. And then what is our next instinct? Our next instinct is to fill this down. And that's the way that we've been using formulas for as long as we can remember. We fill it down, right? And that would be one way to do this. But since our argument value is referencing a spill value, a spill range, we can actually use an operator, the spill reference operator, the pounder hash. And so when we use this, it's telling Excel that we want to reference this entire range. And when we hit enter, now we can see that that is filled down for us automatically. And what's really cool is we save, close, move on, life good, next period 10018, internet of 1000, and it's done. It's done. If you are familiar with pivot tables, you're going to realize that this looks an awful lot like a pivot table. And yes, we could create something like this with a pivot table. But now we have a new option. And in a way, it's kind of like a blend of a traditional formula-based report and a pivot table report, right? With a formula-based report, we can use all the different functions, 500 plus functions that we have in Excel, so we can calculate lots of different values. But they're fairly manual to update. Like if there was a new account, I'd have to manually insert a row, fill the formula down. So we use pivot tables. And pivot tables dynamically adapt, but we also have to right-click and refresh, and that's not a big deal. But this kind of sits somewhere in the middle. It's like it's a formula-based report, but it's also dynamic, and there's no right-click and refresh. It just happens automatically. So it's just another option. Let me go ahead and delete this, and let's write them one more time. Equals unique. I want to get a unique list of these. Close the function, hit enter. I'm going to ask the SUMIFs function to add up the amount column, comma, only include those rows where the account column, comma, is equal to, watch this, if I select that cell, I could write the spill reference operator manually. I could type it in, but if I just select this range, if I select the entire spill range, then Excel automatically writes that operator for us. So now we can just hit enter and we're good to go. We save, close, move on, life is good, even next period. When there are more accounts or if there are fewer, okay, that's a dynamic array. Cool? All right, let's do the next one. Let's go to exercise 2. Let's zoom in a little bit. Now, here we want to create a unique list of customers and get their subtotals or their summary values. Let's go to data and let's check it out. Here we have a table. It's called table 2. We have a customer column and an amount column. So as you're writing this, you could toggle back and forth, but I'm just going to stay here. For me, it's just easier. That's how I do it in practice. So equals unique. We want to return a list of the unique values in the table 2's customer column, right? We hit enter. So far, so good. Let's go ahead and sort it. And all we need to do is wrap the sort function around the unique function and hit enter. Now we're looking good. And now let's do the SUMIFs. Equals SUMIFs. Okay, do you remember these arguments? We want to add up the table 2's amount column, but we only want to include those rows where the table 2's customer column is equal to our customer. And again, we want to use that spill reference operator, close the function and hit enter, and now we got it. Okay, so again, this is kind of like a dynamic pivot table, but it's a formula-based report, so it's kind of like a hybrid, almost right in between. And what if I wanted to get a sum, a grand total? No worries, we can just use a sum function. And rather than select C13, I'm going to use that spill range operator and close that function so that it's dynamic also. We save, close, move on, life good. Next period, let's just add another row, 2638. Let's just call it Jeff 100. And let's just call it like 100,000. Let's go back here and it's just done. Here it is. There's no right-click refresh. It's just everything is automatically updated, okay? So again, it's just another option that we have that sits somewhere between, traditional formulas and a pivot table. Pretty cool, pretty cool. All right, let me go ahead and close this down. Let's go back here and talk about some additional resources. If you've never used the SUMIFs function before, no worries. I have a full written tutorial. I want to show you where that is so you can check that out on your own. I also want to show you how to get more information about this automatically spilling, the spill range. All right, so let's go back to the Excel University website. So in addition to these publications or these formal articles, I also write informally. You can get to those articles by clicking blog, and you can do a search here, or you can click on the topic you're interested in. For example, if you've not used SUMIFs and you want to learn more about it, just click SUMIFs, and this is going to give you a filter for all of the posts that talk about the SUMIFs function. So feel free to check out any of these that look interesting. The one I'm after right now is on here, and it is called Multiple Condition Summing in Excel with SUMIFs. Click on that, and this is going to take you through a full written tutorial on the SUMIFs functions, how the arguments works, the sum range, the pairs of arguments for the conditions, and all that stuff. So feel free to check that out. Or if you want to check more about the spill range, click on this key term here, spill, and this is going to filter this down for all of the articles and posts that I've written that talk about the spill range. So feel free to check that out. Okay, cool. All right, excellent. Let's go back here and let's go to our final little segment here. This is called multiple columns. Multiple columns. So far, our formulas have spilled down, right? But I wanted to kind of let you know that they can also spill, horizontally or into multiple columns. So let me go ahead and open up a workbook called Multiple Columns. Okay. Now the first function that I will demonstrate is called filter. And the filter function returns a range, or technically a subset of a range, any values that meet the filter criteria. So here's what that looks like, equals filter. Okay, and we specify the range that we want to return, and this is going to be our table here, table 1, comma, and then we give it this include expression. So what we're going to say is return the values in table 1, but only include those rows where the type column value is equal to, and then in quotes I'm going to type the argument here, refund. Okay, so this is going to say give me a copy of this table, but only include those rows where the type value is equal to the word refund. Hit enter, and now we have multiple columns and multiple rows returned. Now, historically, what we could do is just apply a filter and then copy paste special those values. Now we have another option. So for example, if I didn't want to mess with this data source and I didn't want to filter it, and I wanted to pull this list of refunds out to a separate worksheet, and maybe I do that so that accounting can process all of those refunds, or someone can call and follow up and otherwise take the next step in the process. Now we have another option. We have the filter function. So let me write this formula one more time, equals filter. I want to grab the values in the table, but I only want to include those rows where the type column is equal to refund. Close function and enter, and we got it. Okay, and this is a dynamic array, so it will adapt when there are more or fewer rows in this data source. Now, in this first warm-up exercise, I typed this criteria value in manually. But oftentimes in Excel, it's a better idea to place that into a cell value and then reference that cell value instead. That just makes it more dynamic and easier to update. So let's take a look at the next exercise. Here we want to grab all of the rows for the specified rep. And we look at this data table, and we see that the table is named table 2. We have a bunch of columns. We have this rep column. So we want to bring back all of the transactions for whatever rep the user has typed into this cell. So it's equals filter. Okay, the range is table 2. We only want to include those rows where the table's rep column is equal to the rep here. And I'm going to close that function. By the way, there's additional arguments, so you're going to check those out. But our instinct is to lock this down with an absolute reference. But it's not necessary because this formula is the one that returns all of the results, and those results spill out into the adjacent cell. So it's not like this formula is getting filled down and C6 is being updated to C7, C8, C9. It's not like that. So that was a weird adjustment for me to get used to. But this one formula is the one that returns all of those results, and those results simply spill out. So we hit enter, and now we got it. And maybe we want to see GSL. So we can type GSL, hit enter, and we got it. And we can do BEO or DAR. Let's try DAR. We got it. BEO, we got it. Okay. So this is an example of referencing a cell value. Okay. What if we wanted to sort this by something other than alphabetical? Maybe we want to sort it descending by this transaction ID number. Okay, no worries. Let's go ahead and wrap the sort function around this filter function and then a comma. And now we get this argument called sort index. And this is simply the index number for the column that we want to sort by. So 1 would sort by the first column, trans ID. 2 would sort by the second column, that's the date. 3 would be rep or region rep, and 6 would be the amount column. So in this case, let's say we want to do it by the first column, and then we want to specify the sort order as descending. So that's going to be -1. So we can close the function and hit enter. And now these results are sorted in descending order by transaction ID. What if we want to sort it descending by amount? Then we would change this sort index from 1 to 6 and hit enter. And now it's sorted descending amount. What if we wanted it ascending amount? Then we would just change this back to 1 and hit enter, and we got it. So there are many arguments and many arguments for the sort function that gives us control over the sort results. Now let's say we wanted to sum the amount column. We could go equal sum, and it might be tempting to select that first column and then hit the spill range operator and then hit enter, but that's not going to work. Because if we look at it, it's a spill range. It's not the formula. It's in somewhere within the spill range. So this operator, the spill reference operator, works when we're talking about the formula cell here. In other words, if we go equal sum of all of this, that's the spill range that we can reference, and we hit enter, but that's not the sum result that we want. That adds up all these numeric values. So how can we accommodate this? Well, equal sum. We can use the index function to help us out. And the index function has been around for decades, and what it can do is return a subset of a range. So what we're going to do is we're going to say index. We're going to select this entire range. It gives us the spill reference operator, comma. So it says from within this entire spill range, which row do we want? So 0 means all rows, or we can leave it out. That also means all rows. Either way is fine. Which column? And again, this is just like the sort. So we'd go column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Close the index function, close the sum function, and enter. And now we've got the results that we want. Okay. And as these values change, as the data source is updated, we paste in new transactions, or as a user types in a different value. Everything is dynamic, everything updates. So like I said, it's kind of like in the middle of a traditional formula-based report and a pivot table. It's like automatic, there's no right-click refresh, and it's dynamic. So it's just yet another option that we have available to us. All right, let's go to example 3. And let me zoom in a little bit. There we go. Okay, the idea here is that we have this account number column. And we want to go retrieve some related values, right? So we want to look up this account number based on this. We want to return the account name. We want to return the FS. We want to return nature and FS line. So we want to return all of these things. Traditionally, Excel users would probably do something like VLOOKUP, where we would go find this, comma, in the entire table, return the value from the 1, 2, 3, column, and then write another function here, another one here, another one here, and then fill all of them down. But I want to let you know that there's now another alternative, and it's called XLOOKUP. And it looks something like this, XLOOKUP. We want to go find this, so go find the account number, same as VLOOKUP, comma, in here, instead of specifying the entire table, now we just specify the lookup column. So we want to go find this account number in our account number column, comma, and we want to return, and now we can specify the return column or columns. So we could say just return the account name column, or we could, or we could say, let's return all of these columns. Close the function. Before I hit enter, let's review. I'm asking the XLOOKUP function to go find the account num, that looks right. In the account num column, that looks right. And return all of these and enter. And now we've got it. So one formula returns multiple columns. And then we'll fill this down. And we can't use that spill reference operator trick here because these are just manual labels that I typed in. These are not formulas, or these are not part of a spill range. So that's why we fill this formula down. And we got it, okay? Cool. All right, let me go ahead and write this formula one more time. Equals XLOOKUP. We want to go find this, comma, in here, comma, we want to return all of these. Close function, enter, and let's fill it down, and we got it. Okay, good. All right, excellent. Let's go back to here, and I want to take you to an article that talks about XLOOKUP. So if you are on a version of Excel that has XLOOKUP, but you just haven't had a chance to kind of check it out, just head back to the Excel University website, click Publications, and look for this article here, click it, and this is going to be a big tutorial on how to use XLOOKUP, how do the function arguments work, and all of that stuff. So feel free to check that out if that will be helpful. All right? So that is the idea of dynamic arrays. Formulas can return multiple values, and when a formula returns multiple values, those values spill out of the formula cell and into adjacent cells. We looked at filling down, and we also looked at filling right through various columns. Okay, so hey, I hope this is a good place to get started. There's a lot more to unpack, more than we can fit into this short webinar, but hopefully this at least points you in the right direction and introduces you to this really cool new capability spilling out of Excel, dynamic arrays. Thanks so much for joining me. Have a great day.
This video is a production of Excel University.